Would you like to introduce a bit? I'm going to do Crockett and Russ.
Yes. You'll find out soon enough, probably by tomorrow morning, how it all goes. But let us say Sam Vines finds himself in a rural environment. Outside his comfort zone, outside his jurisdiction. He's gone on holiday. And everybody, we know about narrativium. We know what happens when policemen go somewhere for a nice holiday.
At that point, okay. Sam Vines has dropped into his local country pub where he learns about a fascinating local hobby and meets an old adversary. Vines was becoming aware that the pub was filling up, mostly with other sons of the soil, but also with people who, whether they were gentlemen or not, would expect to be called so. They wore colourful caps and white trousers and spoke continuously. Outside, horses and carriages were filling the lane. Hammering was going on somewhere, and Jim and his wife was now manning, or more correctly, womaning the bar, while her husband ran back and forth with his tray. Vines took a look out of the grubby pub window. Regrettably, that pub was that most terrifying of things. It was picturesque, which meant that the windows consisted of small round panes fixed in place with lead. They were for letting the light in, not for looking out of, since they bent the light so erratically that it nearly broke. One pane showed what was probably a sheep, but which actually looked like a white whale until it moved when it became a mushroom. A man walked past with no head until he reached another pane, and then had one enormous eyeball. Young Sam would have loved it, but his father decided to give eventual blindness a miss and stepped out into the sunshine. Ah, he thought, some kind of game. Oh well. Vines wasn't keen on games because they led to crowds, and crowds led to work with coppers. But here, in fact, he wasn't a copper, was he? It was a strange feeling, so he left the pub and became an innocent bystander. Couldn't remember when he'd been one before. He felt vulnerable. He strolled over to the nearest man, who was hammering some stakes into the ground, and asked, "What's going on here then?" Realising that he'd spoken in copper rather than ordinary citizen, quickly, if you don't mind me asking. The man straightened up. He was one of the ones with the colourful caps. "Oh, have you ever seen a game of croquet, sir? It's the game of games." Mr. Civilian Vines did his best to look like a man eager for more delicious information. Judging by his informant's enthusiastic grin, he was about to learn the rules of croquet, whether he wanted to or not. Well, he thought, I did ask. At first sight, sir, croquet might seem like just another ball game, wherein two sides strive against one another by endeavouring to propel the ball by hand or bat or other device into the opponent's goal of some sort. Croquet, however, was invented during a game of croquet at St. Onan's Theological College in Ham-on-Rye, when the novice priest Jackson Fieldfare, now Bishop of Quern, took his mallet in both hands and instead of giving the ball a gentle tap. After that, Vines gave up. Not only because the rules of the game were incomprehensible in their own right, but also because the extremely enthusiastic young man allowed his enthusiasm to overtake any consideration of the need to explain things in some sensible order. Which meant that the flood of information was continually punctuated by apologetic comments on the lines of, "Oh, I am sorry, I should have explained earlier that a second cone is not allowed more than once per exchange. Or, in normal play, there's only one tongue, unless, of course, you're talking about royal croquet." Lions died. The sun dropped out of the sky, giant lizards took over the world, the stars exploded and went out, and all hope vanished and gurgled into the sink trap of oblivion. And gas filled the firmament and combusted, and behold, there was a new heaven, one heaven learner, and a new disk, and lo, and possibly verily, life crawled out of the sea, or possibly didn't, because it had been made by the gods. And lizards turned into less scaly lizards, or possibly didn't, and lizards turned into birds, and worms turned into butterflies, and a species of apples turned into bananas, and possibly a kind of monkey fell out of a tree and realised that life was better when you didn't have to spend your time hanging on to something. And in only a few million years, the cloth trousers and ornamental striped hats. And lastly, the game of croquet. And there, magically reincarnated, was Vimes. A little dizzy, standing on the village green, looking into the smiling countenance of an enthusiast. Say, well, that's amazing, thank you so very much. I look forward to enjoying the game. At which point he thought a brisk walk home might be in order, only to be foiled by a regrettably familiar voice behind him saying, "You, I say you, yes you, are you Vimes?" It was Lord Rust, usually a young warhawk and a fierce old warhorse, without whose unique grasp of strategy and tactics several wars would not have been so bloodily won. Now he was in a wheelchair, a newfangled variety pushed by a man whose life was, knowing his lordship, quite probably unbearable. But hatred tends not to have a long half-life, and in recent years Vimes had regarded the man as now no more than a titled idiot, rendered helpless by age, yet still possessed of an annoying horsey voice that, suitably harmless, might be used to saw down trees. Lord Rust was not a problem anymore. There were surely only a few more years to go before he would rust in peace. And somewhere in his knobby heart, Vimes still retained a slight admiration for the cantankerous old butcher, with his evergreen self-esteem and absolute readiness not to change his mind about anything at all. The old boy reacted to the fact that Vimes, the hated policeman, was now a duke, and therefore a lot more knobby than he was, by simply assuming that this could not possibly be true, and therefore totally ignoring it. Lord Rust, in Vimes's book, was a dangerous buffoon, but, and here was the typical bit, and incredibly, a suicidally brave one. This would have been absolutely tickety-boo, were it not for the suicides of those poor fools who followed him into battle. Witnesses had said that it was uncanny. Rust would gallop into the jaws of death at the head of his men and was never seen to flinch, yet arrows and morning stars always missed him, while invariably